The Persian Gulf, 2 a.m., the water is black, flat, silent, no lights on the horizon, no engine sound, no crew. Just 3 small boats cutting through the darkness at 40 miles per hour heading toward the Iranian coast. No one is steering them. No pilot, no sailor, no one to call back. These boats have one job, one direction, no return. By the time the sun rose over Bandar Abbas on July 13, 2025, a piece of Iran's most critical naval infrastructure was gone. A submarine maintenance facility, destroyed, not by a fighter jet, not by a missile from a warship, by 3 unmanned boats, packed with explosives, guided by code. For the first time in American military history, the United States had used uncrewed surface vessels in direct combat. No pilot risked, no crew endangered, just machines, doing what machines are now built to do. This wasn't just a strike. This was the opening of a new chapter in American warfare. But to understand why those 3 boats were in that water, we need to go back a few months. Spring 2025. After a series of devastating American airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities and military installations, both sides stepped back from the edge. A ceasefire was announced, a memorandum signed. The world exhaled. For 60 days there was quiet. The agreement was simple. The US would halt further strikes. Iran would stop its proxies. A fragile peace built on exhaustion, not trust. But buried inside that memorandum was a clause. A safe passage clause designed to keep commercial shipping moving freely through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran read it differently. Tehran's interpretation, that this clause gave them the right to inspect and effectively control vessels passing through what they called their strategic waterway, not freedom of navigation. Iranian supervision of navigation. The international community disagreed, loudly. Then came July 6th. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, attacked 3 commercial vessels in the Gulf, boarding teams, warning shots, 1 ship seized. The message was unmistakable. Trump's response was immediate. The ceasefire is over. Within 48 hours, CENTCOM U.S. Central Command launched retaliatory strikes. Night 1, 80 targets hit across Iran. Night 2, 90 more. By the end of the week, the number crossed 300. Radar installations, missile batteries, command posts, naval assets. Each night, the strikes grew larger. Each morning, the tension grew heavier. The world watched. Oil markets shook. Shipping companies rerouted vessels thousands of miles to avoid the strike. And somewhere inside the Pentagon, a decision was being made. Not to send more jets, not to deploy more warships, but to use something the world had never seen America use in combat before. July 12, 2025. Late night. While most of the world was asleep, CENTCOM was executing the most unusual strike package in modern American military history. Jets were in the air, aerial drones were circling. Naval vessels were positioned. But alongside all of that, something new was entering the water. 3 uncrewed surface vessels, sea drones, no pilots inside, no sailors on board. Just engines, explosives and targeting systems moving silently through the Gulf toward the Iranian coastline. The target, a submarine and ship maintenance facility at Bandar Abbas, Iran's most strategically important naval port. Not chosen randomly. Chosen precisely because destroying maintenance infrastructure doesn't just damage what's there today. It cripples what Iran can deploy for months, possibly years. The drone model later confirmed by CENTCOM was the Corsair, built by a company called Saronic, a one-way vessel. Once launched, there is no recall, no abort option. It goes, it finds, it strikes. By early morning on July 13th, the facility was destroyed. CENTCOM released a statement confirming the strike, confirming the use of uncrewed surface vessels, confirming that this was officially the first time in American combat history that sea drones have been used in a direct strike mission. 3 boats, no crew, no return. And with that, the nature of naval warfare changed. Not gradually, not theoretically. That night, in those waters, permanently. But where did this technology come from? Because America didn't invent the sea drone in a vacuum. This specific idea of an unmanned explosive boat as a weapon was born not in a Pentagon lab, not in a California defense startup. It was born in Ukraine. Russia's Black Sea Fleet was dominating Ukrainian waters. Ukraine had no navy to speak of, no warships, no submarines, no way to fight back conventionally. So they improvised. Ukrainian engineers working with limited resources, commercial components, and desperate creativity built unmanned explosive boats from scratch. Fiberglass hulls, off-the-shelf GPS, packed with explosives, guided remotely toward Russian warships. The results were stunning. A $50,000 drone boat destroying a $750 million Russian warship. over and over again. Russia's Black Sea Fleet, one of the most powerful regional naval forces in the world, was slowly being dismantled by machines that cost less than a luxury car. The Pentagon was watching very carefully, because they weren't just seeing Ukraine survive, they were seeing the future of naval warfare, and they had China in mind. Beijing has been building warships at a pace the US Navy cannot match ship for ship. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines. The numbers gap is widening every year. But what if you didn't need to match them ship for ship? What if a fleet of cheap, autonomous, expendable sea drones could neutralize a naval force 10 times their cost? That question drove years of research, multiple contractors, competing designs, and eventually the Corsair. Behind every weapon system there are people. Meet Danny. Danny isn't one person. He's a composite representing the hundreds of engineers, programmers, and naval architects who spent years building this capability. People who worked in quiet warehouses near coastlines. Who ran simulations at 3 a.m., who argued over hull designs and propulsion systems and payload configurations. Danny's team wasn't alone. Multiple companies competed for this contract. Saronic, Martac, Blue Ops, Sierra Nevada Corporation. Each brought a different design philosophy, different strengths, different visions of what an autonomous strike vessel should look like. Years of competition, testing, failure, redesign, until one day the Corsair was cleared, not just for testing, for combat. Now imagine someone on the other side. Call him Reza, a dock worker at Bandar Abbas. Early shift, walking toward the facility as the sun began to rise on July 13th. Except the facility wasn't there anymore. We don't know what Reza saw that morning. We don't know what he felt. But someone was standing at that waterfront looking at the damage and understanding, perhaps before most of the world did, that something fundamental had just changed. And inside CENTCOM, someone like Commander Ellis, a military planner who had spent months preparing the strike package, was reading the confirmation report, quietly, carefully, knowing exactly what it meant. But here's something most reports missed. This wasn't the Corsair's first appearance in these waters. Go back to June 2025. A US Apache helicopter operating over the Gulf of Oman was shot down. Crew members in the water. Hostile environment. A rescue operation that needed eyes on the surface fast. A Corsair-type drone was deployed. Not as a weapon, as a scout, as a rescue asset, locating the downed crew, guiding recovery teams, keeping watch over American lives in dangerous water. The same platform, the same hull, the same technology. First it saved American sailors, then weeks later it destroyed Iranian infrastructure. There's something almost poetic about that arc. A tool built for war, first proving itself to an act of rescue, then returning to those same waters, this time with a very different mission. Full circle, same machine. Now let's talk about why this actually matters strategically and technically. First, the target selection. Bandar Abbas wasn't hit because it was symbolic. It was hit because it was smart. Destroying a maintenance facility doesn't make headlines the way sinking a warship does. But the long-term damage is arguably greater. Iran's submarines and fast attack boats need constant maintenance. Without that facility, vessels already in service begin degrading. Scheduled deployments get delayed. Operational readiness collapses slowly, quietly, irreversibly. One strike, months of damage. Now why sea drones specifically? Because some targets simply cannot be hit safely any other way. Iranian coastal infrastructure sits inside layered air defense systems, surface-to-air missiles, radar networks, anti-aircraft guns. Sending a manned jet into that environment carries enormous risk both to the pilot and to the mission. Sea drones change that calculation entirely. They sit low in the water, no jet engine noise, minimal thermal signature, small radar cross-section. They are for all practical purposes nearly invisible to conventional defense systems until it's too late. Think of the July 12th strike package like an orchestra. The jets were the brass section, loud, powerful, drawing attention. Aerial drones were the strings, precise, persistent, watching everything. Naval vessels were the percussion presence, weight, deterrence. And the sea drones, they were the instruments no one heard coming, moving silently beneath the noise of everything else until the moment they arrived. This is a strategic gap the Corsair closes. Coastal targets, heavily defended, previously too risky for crewed aircraft, now reachable cheaply, quietly, and without risking a single American life. That gap between what America could hit and what America wanted to hit just closed, permanently. Before we go further, let's be honest about what we know and what we don't. CENTCOM confirmed the strike. CENTCOM confirmed the use of uncrewed surface vessels. CENTCOM confirmed the Corsair by name. What CENTCOM has not confirmed is the exact number of drones deployed beyond the 3 named in initial reports. Some defense analysts suggest more were involved. That remains unverified. Speed and payload figures circulating online 40+ miles per hour. Specific explosive weights are informed estimates based on contractor specifications, not officially released combat data. And the full extent of damage to the Bandar Abbas facility still being assessed. We report what is confirmed. We flag what isn't. That's the standard this channel holds itself to. The world didn't take long to react. Within hours of the strike confirmation, oil markets moved. Brent crude jumped nearly 4%, touching close to $79 per barrel. Traders weren't just reacting to one facility being destroyed. They were reacting to what it signaled, that this conflict was entering a new unpredictable phase. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply. Any serious disruption there doesn't just affect the Middle East. It affects fuel prices in London, in Tokyo, in Chicago. Markets understood that. Immediately, Trump addressed the nation. The United States, he declared, was the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz. Freedom of navigation was non-negotiable. Any attempt by Iran to control, tax, or restrict international shipping would be met with force. Strong words, loudly delivered. Iran's response was predictable and calculated. Officially, Tehran denied significant damage. State media claimed Iranian forces had shot down a U.S. drone during the exchange. Independent verification of that claim remains unavailable. But Iran didn't stay quiet on the ground. Retaliatory strikes hit U.S.-linked bases across the region: Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Qatar. Facilities associated with American military presence came under attack: missiles, drones, a coordinated response designed to signal that Iran could still reach beyond its borders. One particularly troubling report emerged: a strike on an agricultural water pumping station causing civilian casualties. Details remain unverified. But if confirmed, it would represent a significant and dangerous escalation in targeting. The region was no longer holding its breath. It was bracing. Step back for a moment. Because what happened on July 12th wasn't just about Iran, and it wasn't just about the Strait of Hormuz. It was about the future of naval warfare itself. For decades, naval power meant expensive things. Aircraft carriers costing $13 billion each, destroyers at $2 billion, submarines at $3 billion and above. A naval arms race that only the wealthiest nations could sustain. Iran understood this asymmetry from the other direction. For years, Tehran's strategy was simple. If you can't afford a navy, build a swarm. Hundreds of small, fast, cheap attack boats flooding the strait simultaneously. Overwhelming expensive American assets through sheer numbers. America just turned that strategy around completely. Because the Corsair costs a fraction of what Iran's fast attack boats cost to operate over time. Multiply that across hundreds of autonomous vessels, and suddenly the cost equation flips entirely. Cheap beats expensive. Autonomous beats crude. Expendable beats irreplaceable. And here's where China enters the picture. Beijing has spent 2 decades building the world's largest navy by ship count, designed specifically to challenge American dominance in the Pacific. Carrier groups, destroyer fleets, amphibious assault ships. Iran was the test. China is the target audience. Every piece of data collected from July 12th drone performance, radar evasion, strike accuracy, system reliability under combat conditions feeds directly into Pacific war planning. Bandar Abbas was a proving ground. The South China Sea is the examination hall. What worked against Iran's coastal defenses tonight will be studied, refined, and scaled for a much larger confrontation that nobody wants but everybody is preparing for. So where does everything stand right now? Shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has dropped to its lowest level in roughly 5 weeks. Insurance premiums for vessels attempting passage have spiked dramatically. Several major shipping companies have suspended Hormuz routes, entirely rerouting cargo around the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks and thousands of dollars to every journey. The fundamental question, who controls this waterway, remains dangerously unresolved. Oman has quietly stepped forward as a potential mediator. Muscat has historically maintained communication channels with both Washington and Tehran. Back-channel conversations are reportedly underway, though nothing confirmed publicly. Iran has floated a proposal: transit fees for vessels passing through what it considers a strategic corridor, a toll system for one of the world's most critical international waterways. The legal problem? International maritime law is unambiguous. The Strait of Hormuz is an international transit passage. No single nation has the legal right to charge tolls or restrict innocent passage. Iran knows this. They're making the argument anyway. Come back to that image. 3 small boats, black water, 2 a.m., no pilot, no crew, no hesitation. For decades, unmanned systems watched. They surveilled, they guided, they assisted. But the moment of violence, the final decisive act that always required a human hand, A pilot in a cockpit, a sailor at a console, a finger on a trigger. July 12, 2025 changed that. The machine didn't assist the strike, the machine was the strike. And there's a certain irony worth noting. Iran built its entire Gulf strategy around small, fast, cheap, expendable boats designed to overwhelm expensive American assets. A swarm strategy, an asymmetric strategy. America just used that exact strategy against Iran. The hunter became the hunted, using the hunted's own weapons. What comes next, nobody knows. Negotiations may resume. Tensions may escalate. The strait may stabilize or fracture further. But one thing is certain. The quiet boats that crossed that dark water on July 12th, they are not going back.